Hey, thank you for checking out Performance Anxiety on the Pantheon Podcast Network. I am your host, Mark. And once you've checked out this show, feel free to head over to Pantheon Podcasts and check out some of the other great shows they have on the network. There is literally something for everyone. And before we get too far into this, I want to thank our sponsor, AKG, for their Podcaster Essentials Kit. The Lyra mic and headphones are ideal for starting your own podcast. They're easy to use and incredibly affordable. Flood Twins Grant Curry joins me on this episode. His road to music was neither direct nor easy. He was diagnosed with diabetes at age 8, and by the age of 14, he was already in a drug treatment center. After going through rehab, he has stayed clean and even became a counselor. But music was always in the back of his mind calling him. When the opportunity to take time off of work and play came, he took it and never looked back. He met James Hall and created 4 incredible albums with James Hall and Pleasure Club. But after Hurricane Katrina uprooted his life in Louisiana, Grant relocated to Georgia and eventually formed his new band Flood Twin. The band is releasing their debut album, and it's a beast. Not only is the music minimalist and powerful, but so is the artwork, which was also done by Grant. Follow the band at Flood Twin, and you can buy the album on Bandcamp or stream it anywhere. Follow us at Performance ANX on the socials. Feed us coffee at ko-fi.com/performanceanxiety. Buy things at performanceanx.threadless.com. And get ready to hear some stories with Grant Curry of Flood Twin on Performance Anxiety, part of the Pantheon family of shows.
This is Grant Curry with Flood Twin. I'm on Performance Anxiety podcast with Mark Shea, and we've got a record coming out March. Let me start over. Okay. Hi, this is Grant Curry with Flood Twin. I'm on Performance Anxiety podcast with Mark Shea. Flood Twin has an album coming out October 8th, streaming via SoundCloud and CD and download via Bandcamp. We'll be playing the Earl October 15th here in Atlanta, and we'll be playing October 14th at the Nick in Birmingham, Alabama. Thank you.
All right. Well, how you doing? What's happening?
Good. Well, we're getting looks like we're getting a storm coming in through here.
Yeah, it cooled off.
Yeah, looks like we're getting a storm coming in. It's getting pretty windy and starting to rain a little bit. So
where are you at?
I'm in Winchester, Virginia.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right.
So you're in Georgia right now, right?
I'm in Atlanta. Yeah. I'm not originally from here, but lived here in Georgia since beginning of 2010. I originally from Southeast Louisiana, Slidell and New Orleans, and I left several years after the storm.
Right.
Water kind of ran me out of there.
Yeah, I heard that from a few people.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
A bit of a heartbreak to leave there, but I saw that you were interviewing Dupsy the other day.
Yeah, and I had Corey Ledette on too.
That's great. You know, I used to go see Dupsy's father.
Oh, Rockin' Dupsy.
I used to go see Rockin' Dupsy and the Zydeco Twisters when I was young.
Oh, that's awesome.
We'd go see them at the Rockin' Bowl at Mid-City Lanes. It was an old bowling alley, and they had live music. It was great.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Well, I'm gonna try and make this hard for you as well.
Okay, make me earn my keep, huh?
Yeah.
Earn my big podcast bucks?
Yeah, man. So
the way I usually like to start out is to find out a little bit about how you got to where you are. Find out about how you got into music in the first place. You are a bass player, but was that the instrument that you started with?
No, I started with guitar when I was real young.
Okay.
And, you know, I'd say it. I just never... I mean, I can play just fine, but I never really connected with it. And it wasn't until I sat in with a friend's band when I was probably, 16, 17, and they needed a bass player for the day.
Okay.
And they loaned me a bass, and, that was the moment I felt like, oh, yeah, this is my instrument, And then from that point, I think I probably struggled through on guitar for maybe another couple of years, but eventually got myself a bass and played bass in a couple bands of No Consequence, a cover band, and
Okay.
with people I worked with, and then a couple like not so excellent bands, and I really found my voice with bass, and it really felt like the instrument that was for me. I started on cello when I was probably in third or fourth grade, and I loved cello. Unfortunately, I, like a lot of young people starting out instruments, I had an instructor who just wasn't very patient, and so it became a real frustrating thing for me, and I didn't enjoy it.
That's such a shame.
Yeah, because today I wish that I was proficient in cello.
Yeah. Oh, that's a shame. I hate hearing that. Was there a lot of music in the house when you were growing up? Were you listening to a lot of stuff?
No. There was no. My mother's father was a musician, but and he apparently during Prohibition, and my mother was from Pittsburgh, and during Prohibition, he in his late teens was playing speakeasies.
Oh wow!
And he was a sax player, and apparently he was quite gifted, and had his own band, and I guess decided not to pursue music. He was apparently invited to join Benny Goodman's band at one point.
Wow!
But he put music down because of the depression, and felt like he should try and pursue a living that was a little more secure, and so. He worked his way through Carnegie Tech, working at a mortuary at night.
Oh my God!
And got his engineering degree, and then went on to, I think he worked for U.S. Steel for years and years as an engineer. And anyways, I never got to see him or hear him play saxophone. When I was a little kid, we'd go visit, and I'd see him tinkering around. He had a beautiful Chickering piano, and he had an organ. But I never got to see him play sax, and so that was a disappointment to me. Oh. So I didn't grow up around any music, actually, and neither of my parents are musicians. My beautiful sister was not a musician, and I was the only one.
Wow.
And I grew up, listening to my parents' small handful of albums, and they had the Beatles' Red album, the double Red compilation.
Yep.
And I love that. I fell in love with the Beatles. The Beatles were my first thing,
Okay. You didn't grow up thinking that music was going to be a profession for you then?
I guess I grew up thinking that I probably wouldn't get to. I wanted to. I wanted more than anything. I think probably from the time I was 6, I wanted more than anything to be a musician, but I didn't think that I was good enough, my parents, like a lot of parents, they didn't necessarily see a lot of natural talent in me, and didn't really encourage me to chase that. And I heard more than a couple times, hey, you have to be really good to make it in music, and that was disconcerting. But clearly, I didn't let that stop me.
Nope.
And they would say today that they were glad I didn't listen to them, that I ignored them most of the time, defied them, at every turn.
You had some health problems growing up. Did that affect your playing or your desire to play music or to find a creative outlet at all?
Yeah, I would say that it affected my everything. Yeah, so I grew up with type 1 diabetes since I was 8.
Wow.
And, it impacted me so deeply. And now you got to understand, when I was diagnosed, there was the insulin pumps weren't being widely used. They were still just in the infancy of studies and development, and they were as big as a backpack, and home blood testing didn't exist, We didn't have technology, and so managing diabetes was incredibly difficult. And, I heard from a young age that I probably wasn't going to live very long, and I would be challenged with a lot of problems along the way. I was going to be compromised, I was probably going to lose limbs. I might go blind,
I've heard that, yeah.
Kidney failure, these kind of things. And, while all those things can and do happen to some people with diabetes, hearing that shit at 8 years old, there's nothing good in that.
No.
being told those things as a hey, let's scare him into taking care of himself. Well, 8-year-old kids aren't really supposed to know how to take care of themselves too well,
Exactly.
And we need a lot of help doing that. And so anyways, I grew up with a lot of fear, and I grew up fast, and I matured fast in many ways. And I just grew up with a real intensity, and more intensity, I think, than I could really bear at most times. And
oh, wow.
And to this day, I would say that, I'm a pretty intense person, and, that's where a lot of that comes from. But the thing that happened is, well, one, I had a number of challenging years, where my health was not good.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you bring this up. And there's a reason why I have it in my bio, because it did impact me so deeply, and it has led me to all the things that I do today, and it's led me to the life that I have, and to be the person that I am. And so, I went through years of trying to manage that with drugs,
right,
and alcohol. I started that when I was 8 as well.
Wow.
And I eventually ended up near dead and in a lockup drug treatment facility at 14, and
wow.
And I spent 1982 institutionalized and locked up part of the time, and that was a tough time. But again, man, like, this stuff shaped me, and I don't have a good explanation for you as far as how have I managed to stay clean, because I have, right? I've been clean since then. And
wow, that's fantastic.
I've been able to harness the challenges of my diabetes fairly well, and come to some level of peace with that, and be able to take care of myself. And I work really hard at it. And so, I think that growing up with chronic illness and addiction gave me insight, and it gave me resilience, and it gave me a deep, deep desire to want to do the things in life that really meant something to me, and try not to spend too much time doing things that really weren't meaningful to me, and so I think that those things did lead me to music, and I think that they've also led me to be, look, I don't think I'm any kind of like great example of a human being, but I try, and God damn it, like, diabetes enabled me to see people as they are. Okay. And diabetes enabled me to see people with challenges as my equals and as valid human beings, enabled me to see people of different races and of different ideas, and as people that were worthwhile, and were like me, and so I don't know, the underdogs of the world I connect with, and I'm thankful for that. So that led me to ultimately decide that I didn't want to pursue a conventional life. I didn't want my priorities to be based in income. I needed for my priorities to be based in me being satisfied living in the arts.
But now that wasn't a straight jump for that, because you did go into substance abuse counseling, right? You were actually helping people out.
Yes. Yeah. How did you know that?
I've got my ways.
You do have your ways. I did. So in the immediate, several years after I got clean, I basically, all I did was I barely scraped by in high school, and my every waking hour outside of high school was like desperately clinging on to life and trying to get by, and going to 12-step groups and rehab meetings and all that. And, my weekends were, Friday and Saturday night was hanging out at the Slidell 76 truck stop with, a bunch of 12-step folks, that were all older than me, but they were mentors to me, and they were people that helped me get through it all, And so anyways, I eventually I pursued chemical dependency counseling as a career and did that for a few years. And I was really good at it. And I actually didn't work with a lot of adolescents. I did for a time, but mostly I was better working with adults, even though I was so young still. Wow. And at, 19, 20, 21, 22 years old, I was really close to getting my national board certification but I just knew it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I already lived that. I didn't want to live and breathe addiction. I wanted to have more in my life. And so I realized that I wanted to be in music,
Yeah. Well, I mean, imagine at that age, living in that world 24/7, fighting those struggles personally with yourself every day, and then trying to help other people do it at that age can be overwhelming, I'm sure.
Yeah. And, who knows? Maybe if I got into it when I was older, maybe it would have gone better for me. But it just, it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
A life in the arts was the right thing for me.
So what was it that made you make that jump from counselor to musician?
I got an opportunity to take a voluntary layoff.
Okay.
From the hospital I worked where at the unit where the unit was that I worked at, and they were doing cutbacks at this hospital, and so I had a caseload of my own at the time, and they said, look, we're going to have to cut your hours, and you have to go to night shift, and we're going to give your caseload to so and so, or you can take a layoff. I took the layoff, and I got several months of severance, and I left Slidell. I was living in Slidell, Louisiana still at the time, and I left Slidell and moved into New Orleans within a week of getting that severance offer.
Oh, wow.
And got a tiny little apartment in the Lower Garden District, which was actually kind of a rough area at the time, right by the St. Thomas projects. And I just devoted myself to, I was in a band at the time, okay? It wasn't a band that I was terribly excited about or really fulfilled in, but I was playing music, okay?
Right.
And so anyways, I devoted all my time for the next several months to going out like night after night after night and looking for other musicians that I could connect with, and to really get something cool going. And it was during that time that I met some guys, and I don't know if you're familiar with James Hall.
I love James Hall.
Originally from Marry My Hope, and Atlanta based, and then he had moved to New Orleans, and he was trying to put together a band, and he had brought a guitarist, Lynn Wright, down with him from Atlanta, and he had started working with drummer Sterling Roig. And I saw them playing. It was actually just James and Lynn playing one night.
Okay.
And I was just absolutely flattened by them. And it was extraordinary. It was like the Velvet Underground with a lot more strangeness mixed in, and with all this really incredibly beautiful melodic stuff happening over all this like really repetitious droney feedback kind of thing. And I just knew it was like these guys are speaking a language that I know. Yeah. And so I approached James soon after that. They rehearsed just a couple doors down from where my band did, and said, "Hey man, I saw you, and I think you guys are fantastic. Are you looking for a bass player?" And sure enough, they were. And so I ended up, I was with James from early '92 until '98. We did two records, two James Hall records together. And look, they were solo records, but it really was not so solo, Yeah. And the band was contributing an awful lot to what was going on. And ultimately, though, it the second record came out on Geffen, and it was a massive deal, and it didn't go well, and the record failed miserably, and it was just a big bummer. We had spent a ton of time on the first record over in Europe, and that went really well, but the second record didn't. So band splintered, and then I spent a year and a half kind of floating and looking for my next move, and I worked with P.W. Long from Mule.
Okay.
Not a lot of people know that I did that, but I worked with, he had this thing called P.W. Long's Real Foot after Mule split up.
Okay.
And he's an absolutely extraordinary artist, and so worked with him, playing bass with him for about a year. And because he had drifted down to New Orleans, and then ultimately he moved on from New Orleans, and I stayed, and James and I felt like we had more to do, and that's when Pleasure Club formed.
Okay.
In late 99, 2000, and James and I recruited Michael Jerome and Mark Hutner, Michael from Course of Empire, Mark from Sugartooth, to complete the band, and we had a great run up until about 2005.
Yeah, those albums are amazing.
Gonna wade into the water with my eyes upon the sun, with permanent solutions and flashes from a gun. Kick it over children before the servants flood your mind. Move faster, baby.
Thank you.
I did get a chance to see you guys, not Pleasure Club, but James Hall on the Maria McKee tour.
Oh, I was playing bass then.
Yeah, I got to see. I was up in Philly. Well, I wasn't in Philly, but that's where I saw you guys at the Theater Living Arts.
Yeah.
That was a great show. You guys blew me away. As soon as the show was over, I went out and bought the album.
Yeah, we were really the token weirdos on that tour, I mean, Maria McKee is, marvelously talented, and we were like happy to be out there with a talent like her, but it didn't fit. You guys went from that to Rage Against the Machine. I mean, I don't see you guys really with either of those acts. Yeah.
It was wild.
Yeah, we ended up on, our agency at the time had a hard time placing us on tours, and we did a number of tours that were ill-fitted, but whatever the case, So that deal though with Geffen just, it blew up in the bad way, and ultimately the band just splintered. And James and I were, we were not doing well personally with each other, which was a bummer because James and I are actually really close and have real deep affection for each other, but we weren't getting along then. And so, we were having creative challenges with each other, and because we were both writing in the band. And anyways, we moved on. He went on and did, just went on to do stuff he's done on his own since, and with some other bands. And I then had built a studio in Louisiana. I started getting into recording and built a studio out in the middle of nowhere on the north side of Lake Pontchartrain in a cabin. And
wow,
which is actually where we recorded the last Pleasure Club record.
Oh, cool.
Which is a place I called Music for Chameleons. Being a bit of a Capote fan, and then I started producing records. I started figuring out how to how to record people. I had some great mentors doing that. Ethan Allen, who was with, had worked in Dan Lanois' Kingsway Studios, worked with Lanois, Mark Howard, Trina Schumacher, Malcolm Byrne, some really great talents there. And Ethan became my mentor. And you may know that Ethan mixed the Flood Twin record.
Yes, I did see that.
And Ethan, I've collaborated with Ethan on a number of things over the years. Anyways, started producing records and working with small but interesting artists. And I didn't really have a band for a few years, but I did do a couple of cool like side projects. Thing called Ballroom Dances Dead that I did with Lynn Wright.
That was awesome.
Thank you, man.
India, that song is incredible. I love that. It's 12 minutes of amazing stuff. I absolutely love that song.
Wow, that's really exciting to me that you're aware of it, and I'm flattered. Thank you. We tried to do Coltrane in the best way we could on that one.
It was so cool. I've only honestly I only discovered it recently, but it was so awesome. It was I've got to go hunt down a physical copy of it now because it kind of blew me away. I didn't know what to expect when I found it. And your bass playing is so economical and powerful, and Lynn's guitar is just. I love the way he played with feedback and sculpting sounds. It was just amazing.
He's an extraordinary talent. Yeah. I'm off to New York tomorrow morning, and I'm going to spend 4 days with him.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. We may have another Ballroom Dances Dead record, coming up sometime here in the next year or two.
Oh, I have to get both of you guys on the podcast if that happens.
Yeah, we'd love that. Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. It was a great project, and it really was just kind of a thing to do on the side, and those. But I love those kind of things. So we did that together, and then I did a couple other things, and then eventually, life just was shattered by a number of things, including the Hurricane Katrina, and I needed to leave Louisiana and move inland. My ex-wife and we left during the flooding, but I was still so psychologically impacted by it, and I couldn't. We always had evacuation bags packed year round after that, and I just couldn't live like that anymore. Always feeling like we needed to be ready to run.
That's tough. That's a tough way to live. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
Yeah. So we left. We came to Georgia, and then life, spectacularly fell apart when we got here, and I divorced, and I really struggled to kind of get my footing musically again. I'm also a visual artist, and
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah. So I was focused more on that for a while.
When did you start doing that? Was that something that you've always done, or was that something you discovered later on?
No, it was something I discovered later on. Now, my mother's a pretty brilliant talent, and although she doesn't necessarily see herself that way, she, had she chosen to, she could have easily had a career in the arts, and I learned a lot from her, and anyways, I grew up interested in visual art, and it wasn't until, though, I was in my probably late 20s that I started to dabble with paints and canvas. And my ex-wife is an artist, and she helped usher me more fully into a routine of doing that. And I painted for quite some time, but then ultimately I really found my way with ink and paper. And I think what I do is, well, it's certainly minimalism, certainly inspired by Asian minimalism.
Yes.
The Zen painters. I don't consider myself at all a Zen painter, but I certainly have great interest in that art form. And, I've taken a lot of interest in artists like Franz Klein and Cy Twombly, Motherwell. Anyways, I've continued to do that, and found an interesting language between the visual art and what I do musically.
Well, there's definitely a connection with the economy of both of your art forms. There's I'm trying to think of the right word. Well, I guess maybe like you said, there's a minimalism in your art and in your bass playing, and you do just what the song needs for your bass playing. You're not trying to cram too many notes in. It's just you're playing what the song requires, and it's really impressive that you're that attuned to the music. You're not trying to showcase yourself.
I really, my abilities probably aren't terribly impressive if I did try. No, I'm serious, man. I don't play fast and I don't play fancy. I think economy is a great word for what I do and how I deliberately apply my artistic sensibilities to music. I don't feel like there's much for me to say to get across what I'm trying to do, And Flood Twin, this band to me is, I think it is the pinnacle, the musical pinnacle of my life. And in terms of finally being able to capture this beautiful minimalism. And it's not just me. I might be jumping forward a little bit too much here for you, but, but Jay Hedberg, guitarist for Flood Twin, I refer to him as being just a master of negative space. I think that, for me in visual art, negative space is so important to what I do. And if I'm able to render a piece of visual art that is beautiful or striking or impactful or intriguing in some way, it's usually going to be because of how little is actually there, right? And Jay applies this same kind of thing with his guitar, and certainly it's it's influenced too by the way that I write. Mm-hmm. And we just kind of when we first started working together, it's just the two of us in my studio here in Atlanta, and we just kept trying to pull things out, and take out stuff that wasn't necessary. And
awesome.
So what ends up happening, I think, in a lot of our songs is that there'll be maybe so little going on in the verse. If we have, we don't even always have verses and choruses. We have, but there'll be so little happening so that when the next thing occurs, it's enormous and it has such tremendous impact.
Yeah.
That's how I experience it anyways. I don't know about you.
Yeah. There's repetition of shapes and phrases, and it's like you said, because of that, when there is a change, it's noticeable and it's very impactful.
Sterling does the same thing. Sterling he's a brilliant drummer. He came up through drum corps in New Orleans, and you come up playing in the drum corps at a New Orleans high school, you're going to develop chops.
Oh yeah.
And you're going to know what the fuck you're doing. All right.
Yep.
You don't last in New Orleans high school drum corps if you don't have it. Right.
If you can't hang, you're out.
All that. Exactly. He's got all that. He's got tremendous training, and yet he applies the same thing. He's always looking for opportunities to strip things back.
Yeah, his
almost nothing.
His kid on the album is very simple as well, if I'm not mistaken, right? He paired it way
You're not
back.
mistaken. it's a kick drum, a snare drum, a hi-hat, and then he has one cymbal, and then occasionally we'll use a sampler pad just for some shading, and some kind of interesting color, or maybe we want to use a hand clap instead of a snare, but it's all done in real time. None of it's programmed.
Wow.
He is nothing but the beat. It's all the pocket is everything, and there's almost an industrial music element to what's happening.
Oh, that's a great point. I didn't think of it like that. This sound and this direction you wanted to go, was that decided before you guys started recording anything, or was it just kind of organic? Or it
was a combination of two things. It was Jay and I had written most of the record by the time we actually decided to start shopping around for a drummer, and I knew that I was interested in Sterling, maybe getting involved, but Sterling had a whole lot of life challenges that had happened over the years.
Okay.
And he had a lot of mental health issues, and this is no secret. He'll talk about it. And he had to step away from music. Okay.
Okay.
And, music broke his heart too many times. And music fucked him up, and he had to find his way back. And so, anyways, he and I have remained dear friends, and so when I put up feelers for drummers, I made him aware that we were looking, but I didn't ask him outright if he was interested, because I wanted it to come from him.
Yeah,
I didn't want him to feel pressured. Anyways, he said, "Let me hear the music. I got to hear the music," and I sent him the demos, and he flipped.
Oh, that's awesome.
And he said, I have to be involved in this. Please give me a chance. I'd love to come and audition. So he drove down. He lives in Jersey.
Oh, wow.
And so he drove down to Atlanta. And 2 songs into the first rehearsal, Jay and I are looking at each other and with knowing eyes, and like, this is it, and that was it. And he joined the band that day. And he's been such a valuable part of it. And he's brought so much magic to this thing, and has elevated, the songs that we had written. He just elevated them to this place of such depth and power, and while still being minimal, because again, he's nothing but the beat, and he doesn't care about impressing anybody with how much he can play. He's interested in impressing a feeling upon people by what he's playing and what he's not playing.
That could be said for all 3 of you guys, because the music, the space that you give each other, the tone of each instrument, everything is so powerful. It's so impressive that it's just the 3 of you guys, and it's not shredding at all. It's not showing off. It's just power. I absolutely love the tone of Jay's guitar. I love the tone of your bass and the simplicity of the drums, and it works so well together.
Here we are, down in the water, down, way down, and there you are. Go down, down in the water. Hey. Go down. Hey.
Thank you.
So how did you guys come up with the name Flood Twin?
I'm not entirely sure. I came up with that, and I'd had it. I've had it for a little while, and really, I'm not. So, I keep coming back to Hurricane Katrina and the flooding and all that. Like, water has figured so prominently in my psyche for a number of years. Okay.
Oh, really?
And water features in my dream state a lot. I don't have a real good understanding of that.
Okay.
I just know that it's there. And so, this idea of just the concept of flooding, the flooding certainly references, the flooding of a body of water, but it's also a flooding of emotional or mental information that sometimes is just too much for me. And I reach points of almost not being able to deal with it. And like a lot of artists do, I mean, most of us are a little bit, crazy, I guess you could say, but I mean, ultimately, like, God damn it, it's not crazy. It's a certain kind of sensitivity to the world and to the input that we get from around us, And so anyways, water figures really heavily, and over again, it does in my life and in my dream state. And so there was that. And Jay and I are completely different people. But there's, how people talk about, I always felt like I had maybe there was a twin or, but they've never met their twin. But it turns out after years and years, they did have a twin and they were separated at birth. Jay is he's not my twin. Jay, and I don't think I have a twin out there somewhere. I have, but my one lovely sister. But Jay, in a way, though, he feels a little bit like that oddball twin to me. And so, I think that there was something in that, when Jay and I were first coming together, and we both, I think, felt like maybe we were kind of a bit washed up musically, and life had kicked us around enough. And so there was a real, there was a real triumphant kind of feeling, and like, wow, man, we're making some great music. So, and the idea of a twin engine, I don't know. I'm not sure. I think that may have come to me in a dream. That's the best answer I can give you.
How did you meet Jay in the first place?
Well, Jay was a Pleasure Club fan, and he used to come around to the shows, and he had said when we were active, and he said hi to me on a number of occasions, and then in years since, I've run into him around town, and his guitarist. He's also a drummer himself, and
oh, cool.
So I. When I initially started looking for like one partner to make music with, Jay had heard that I was looking for somebody to work with, and he rang me up. So.
Oh, that is awesome. I've listened to the album a bunch of times, and it is so cool. I mean, I do love the song People.
Draw your line. There's no in between. There's no in between.
Thank you.
I love Break Your Heart, Down in the Water, which water's coming back in as a theme. But I think one of the coolest songs is Downtown Zeros. I love the music, but I also love your vocal delivery. To me, it's reminiscent of hearing Neil Young tell a story.
Well, I'm out making time with the Downtown Zeros. I'm walking a beat like there's no tomorrow. I'm getting down low with the zeros. Making time.
Wow.
I've heard it when he does his little segues between songs. It just kind of sounds like Neil Young telling me a story. It's the sound of your voice and the way you're delivering it. It's really cool.
Thank you.
When did vocals come into the picture for you? Is that something that you did out of necessity for this album, or you always wanted to do that?
Well, I'm not a singer, clearly. No, I mean, what I do is more of a speak sing, and it's I mean, granted, there are, I don't know, there's 2 songs on the record where I would say I'm legitimately singing, and those are probably Heaven and and If You Were Jesus.
If you were Jesus, I was God. If you were Jesus Christ, I was God. No, sir.
You know, I had to be the singer in this band because when I started writing these compositions, I had things I needed to say.
Okay.
And I just forced myself to develop a vocal style and find something that worked. And I think it works pretty well. And I think I found my place of comfort, and I'm not trying too hard to be somebody vocally that I'm not,
Yeah.
And look, I mean, I hope that I can grow as a vocalist, and I would like to be able to develop more of an ability to actually sing. But there's so much in the delivery all over the album where it's just real guttural and it's coming from the gut and real, like just raw emotion or raw thought,
Primal is the first one that pops into my mind when you say that.
Yeah. It's just full of, it's primal.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Exactly.
It is what it is. Yeah. Yeah.
So did you get a chance to play the music out at all, or?
We haven't played live once.
Oh, are you hoping
once.
to?
We are. We're playing so the record's coming out on October 8th. It'll be available for streaming via SoundCloud, and it'll be available for download and physical purchase via Bandcamp. And we opted just to do CDs for now. It's impossible. There's such a waiting list for vinyl right now. It's ridiculous. And frankly, I like the sound of CDs better. And even though that may make me less than cool,
I love CDs.
But CDs end up sounding like what I wanted the record to sound like, and so I love them. I love them. They're nice and small, Yeah. Anyways, we're doing 2 shows. One in Birmingham, Alabama at the Nick on October 14th, and then the next night, Friday the 15th of October at the Earl here in Atlanta.
Oh, cool.
And so those will be our debuts. And just given with what's happening in our world with COVID and everything right now, we just felt like, let's just do these 2 shows. We'll make our debut, and then we'll just lay low and see what the new year brings. The show at the Nick is a vaccination required, for the safety of everybody there. And, we certainly hope to have a good crowd for that. And we're on fire, man. We're ready. I mean, I really can't wait for this band to get on stage. I mean, I suspect it's going to be pretty explosive, really.
Yeah, I hope you guys take it out on the road a little bit more and come to the DC area so I do too. I can catch you guys live.
That's our intention. We'll be out, and hopefully earlier in the new year than later. So, hopefully what'll happen is that, with the help of people like you, this album will, get a little bit of traction, get a little bit of notice, and we'll be able to go out and, justify going out and doing some touring.
Well, I hope so too. And I hear you make a pretty good gumbo.
Who told you that?
I'm just going to say I heard it somewhere. So,
okay.
Is cooking something you're into too?
Man, yeah, you heard right.
Yeah.
You heard right. I'll say, yeah, you right. You
Yeah.
know? So, yes, man, I make a goddamn good gumbo. And that's kind of how it is, like in New Orleans. Like, people who make gumbo, you ask them, you know, nobody says, oh, my gumbo's okay.
Yeah.
Everybody makes the best gumbo anywhere.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love making gumbo. Now, a few years ago, I quit eating beef, pork, and chicken. I just don't eat a lot of animal fats. I eat some dairy. I eat seafood. So I've had to change. I don't use any real andouille sausage in my gumbo anymore. It's shrimp and crab, and then if I can find the right kind of meatless sausage, I'll use that. But I do a thing. My wife Cynthia and I, when I first moved to Atlanta, I was lonely, man. I missed New Orleans.
Oh, I'm sure.
So much. And my first Halloween, in the house that we're in now, I decided that I was going to set up in the driveway and I was going to make a gumbo.
Nice.
And I went out with a single burner and a pot, and I fixed up a pot of a chicken and andouille gumbo. And what happened that night was incredible. There ended up being like a line of 25, 30 people out down my driveway. To get gumbo, because I was just feeding anybody who was coming by.
Oh yeah.
And if people were coming by to get candy for their kids, I'm like, hey, I got gumbo. You want some gumbo? And they're like, what? Yeah. And some people are like, what's gumbo?
Oh.
And so, anyways, it ended up being this really cool thing that happened. And so people told me, they're like, man, you got to do this again next year. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. And I also then found out later from some of my neighbors who came and told me, they're like, a lot of the people that came by and that you were feeding gumbo, a lot of those people wouldn't have had dinner otherwise.
Wow.
And I was like, really? And because we're kind of in a transitional area.
Okay.
Where we are in this house, and not far from here, there's some impoverished communities, and so I didn't do it because of that. I just went out and was feeding people because I like feeding people gumbo.
Yeah.
Anyways, I did it the next year, and people came back and they said, "Oh yeah, you're the gumbo man, right?" Yeah, I'm Grant. And they're like, "Man, you fed us last year. That was really nice of you, and we really appreciate you."
That's awesome.
Shit, I appreciate you. And so I've been doing that since 2011, Halloween of 2011.
Wow.
And so I get out in the driveway and I make gumbo. Now, I've done seafood gumbos and I've done gumbo zerb, which is, the vegetarian gumbo.
Okay.
With a lot of greens, different kinds of greens in it. And everybody loves it. And people are so appreciative. And Halloween became a thing on our block.
Oh, that's awesome.
We're like one of these destination blocks.
So
people come from all over the city.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
It's amazing. I love that kind of community thing.
Yeah.
My neighbors, they jumped in on it. Now there's like people across the way are doing hot dogs, and then they got a big popcorn machine over here, and then over here they're doing something else. I'll tell you what I want to do is I want to do a Flood Twin gig in my driveway.
Oh, wow. That would be awesome.
I do, man. Just upset everybody.
Yeah. Man, you guys should come up and do one in my driveway too. I think my neighbors would actually dig it.
Well, we've got this thing here in my neighborhood called Oakhurst Porch Fest, and it happens every year, and it's a unsanctioned neighborhood festival, and people host artists on their front porches and in their front yards. And well, I don't like it. All right. I'm the grump. I'm the neighborhood grump. I don't dig it. And it's just a pain in the ass to me. And I don't, it's like people are walking around and this neighborhood's, becoming somewhat gentrified. And I guess I just get bent out of shape thinking about the fact that, if this was like a predominantly African-American neighborhood and people were walking around, drinking beer, like
the cops would be cracking skulls,
Yeah.
And, here it's like it's okay because it's a nice, like family, neighborhood. And
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I get a little bent out of shape with it. But again, I'm the grump, and I admit it. But I was thinking, as an alternative to Porch Fest, I'd host a thing called Dark Driveways.
Oh, cool. I like the name.
That sounds good. Dark Driveways, man. And just do like gothic and dark wave inspired music, just really bum people out. I know Jay and Sterling would back me on this. They'd be all about it.
Well, if based solely on the album, I think you're right.
The album's pretty dark, I guess.
I love it. I think it's really,
Thanks.
it's just got so many different things going on. It's like mentioned a lot. It is stripped back, but there's a lot going on. And I love the feedback in the guitar. I love the powerful bass. It's just really, really, like, I know I've said it a bunch tonight, but it's a very powerful album. So I've really been enjoying it. Where can people find it? How can they order it? How can they follow the band and see what you guys are up to?
Yeah, so, well, for starters, our website is floodtwin.com. And, we'll soon be populating that with more and more information about what's happening with the band. We also have an Instagram page that I've started posting information on.
Okay.
We have a Facebook page as well that, I'm probably going to be leaning more on the Instagram. It's easier, it's more immediate. But that's getting populated with information about what's going on. Again, the album is going to be available for streaming via SoundCloud, and it will also be available for download at Bandcamp, and it will be available for sale for CDs on Bandcamp as well. And
Excellent.
That is all coming on October 8th.
Well, man, thank you so much. I've kept you for about an hour at this point. Thank you for spending so much time with me. It's been so much fun.
Thank you. You've really kind of inspired me to maybe over talk, and I just I really appreciate I appreciate your interest in the album.
Of course,
and appreciate that you've obviously spent some time with it, and you've certainly taken me by surprise here a couple times that you've done your research so well. But I really appreciate it, and thanks from Jay and Sterling too.
of course.
We're really proud of this record, and it means something to us. And we know we're not going to reach the world with it, but we hope to reach people who will really, really love it.
Well, count me in on that, because I love it. I love your artwork. I
Thank
just
you.
absolutely fallen in love with it. I'm looking at the website right now, and I'm not pulling up titles. I don't know if you've titled some of the pieces, but I'm looking at some of them, and they're absolutely incredible.
Thank you so much.
So, is the art for sale? How can people find out more about your artwork too?
If people go to my personal Instagram feed, which is GW Curry, I'm oftentimes posting images there.
Okay.
And, I don't really push my stuff for sale very hard. But yes, it's all available for sale.
Okay.
And people will see something they like and make inquiries. So I certainly, invite people to reach out to me if that's something they were interested in. And I'm always happy to send somebody more images that I maybe haven't posted,
Okay.
I'm going to text you some stuff.
Oh, that would be amazing. I would love that. And
Yeah.
I'll probably reply with some more photos, just because.
Actually, I do actually have a website, and I haven't been great about keeping up with it, but it's grantcurry.com.
Okay. That's
But floodtwin.com that's where you want to be.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And you actually did the artwork for the album, right?
I did, yeah. And yeah, I'm really pleased with it. Again, it's like, it's just stark minimalism.
Yeah.
and it's a representation of retinal hemorrhage.
Oh, wow. That's why I had no idea, because I don't think I've ever actually seen a retinal hemorrhage. So
no, you wouldn't, and I hope you never do. But I had a hemorrhage in my retina in my left eye a few months ago.
Wow.
And it was really scary. It was really frightening. And I'm getting treatment for that. And that was blood trapped between my retina and the vitreous jelly behind the retina. And I needed to be able to describe to my retina specialist what was happening in the eye. And so instead of trying to talk him through it, I just rendered it with ink. And I brought that to him, and I ended up being the cover of the album.
That's amazing.
So,
wow.
Yeah, not fun stuff.
No.
Pretty scary, but I'm okay. And got a great fucking piece of art out of it. And we've got a really interesting and intriguing album cover, because it could be anything. It could be a river delta.
Yeah.
Could be water.
It could, yeah, you're right. It's very abstract. So it, just like a lot of the works on the album, people are going to bring their own interpretations to it. So the artwork fits in perfectly with the album. So it's a wonderful match.
Thank you. Mark, thank you, man. I really enjoyed speaking with you.
Serious. Damascus. You never ask us about Damascus. You never ask us about Damascus. You never ask.